Good evening and welcome to the Eleanor Bunin Monroe Film Center and to this screening, which is part of our ongoing 50th anniversary tribute to the New York Film Festival. I'm Richard Pena, the program director from the Film Society. On behalf of the Film Society, I'd like to welcome you all. I'll let you in on a little secret, which we usually don't publish these things, but back in 1993, I was in touch with some people from a wonderful film producer in Chicago called Kartemquin Films. And I had lived in Chicago for a number of years and knew that there was something called the basketball movie that was being made sort of under the auspices of Kartemquin. And I would always ask my contacts there, how's it coming, how's it coming? And finally, in July of 1993, they said, we've got something to show you, so we're going to send it. And I can remember I got it right before the July 4th weekend. And I saw it that weekend and was just blown away by it. It was just fantastic, and immediately I shared it with my colleagues on the selection committee, and they agreed, and right away we decided to invite this basketball movie. And then just when we were making the announcement for the New York Film Festival that year, I got a phone call from one of the filmmakers, Steve James, who's here, and said, in order for us to meet your deadline, there are about 15 things that would have to happen perfectly on time. And if any one of them didn't happen, there's no way we could make it. So because of that, we better withdraw our film. So unhappily, Sundance got the world premiere of Hoop Dreams. But it didn't matter because the next year, 1994, we had it for the closing night of the New York Film Festival. And it was an absolutely magic evening in Avery Fisher Hall, absolutely packed to the gills, and an ovation at the end that went on just so long. It was really a great, great moment, and one I'll certainly treasure in terms of my memories of the New York Film Festival. So here tonight, we're celebrating that year, 1994, with Hoop Dreams, and here to introduce the film and some of the folks who were involved with it, we have a dear friend and one of my colleagues on that very selection committee that chose Hoop Dreams for the New York Film Festival. Please welcome Wendy Keys.
Hi, thank you all so much for coming. Hoop Dreams was my pick. Each of the members of the selection committee, both past and present, were invited to pick a film that really sort of resonated for them, and Hoop Dreams was mine, so I thank each and every one of you for being here. In 1994, this film really was a sensation. It broke ground in so many significant ways. It brought us all into worlds that we might not otherwise know. We were able to witness the machinations of scouts, athletic scouts in schools. We saw the overripe hopes of the families as their children rose and fell and rose and fell again and rose. And it was just an extraordinary, intimate experience, and I can really vouch for Richard's anecdote on closing night. There has never been such a standing ovation, the cheers and the tears. You don't have to do that tonight, but what I do want to ask you to do is stay behind after the screening. We'll have a Q&A with the filmmakers. They're all here tonight, thankfully, and Arthur Agee, one of the subjects, is here as well. And we have a special treat for you, too. We have an actual NBA basketball player, one of our own New York Knicks, and I'd like to introduce him to you now. He is a two-time NBA All-Star, Baron Davis. And he's going to be talking from up there.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Wendy. I would make it down there, but I'm having a little problem with these crutches. I'm excited to be here, one, because, Hoop Dreams is one of my favorite movies of all time. I would say that growing up and coming from South Central Los Angeles, we never really had anything to see to inspire us, and this was the first film that really, someone like myself could relate to. At the time, I think I was in 10th grade when it came out, and I was going into a transitional period in my career as a basketball player because I wasn't really good enough to get recognized by big-time colleges, and I was at this really, really small private school. But I was from South Central Los Angeles, and I wanted to go back home, to play in the inner city, to play for the city title and get more exposure. So I was really, in a crazy point and position in my life. And my high school coach showed it to our whole team. Like one day after practice, we didn't have practice, so he showed it to our whole team. And I can remember like that being, the film that I always reverted back to, or I kept in my mind or watched when I needed motivation to continue to push through. And I just felt that I could relate to the subjects in the film and everything that they were going through, because I was living like both of their lives at the same time. And I remember when I saw it, I cried and I gave it a standing ovation, and it was like 4 of us in the classroom watching it. But I just knew that if it wasn't for a film like this, I definitely wouldn't have had the wherewithal to really understand where I was in the place that I was in as a young high school student. And I can honestly say this had a big impact on me furthering my career, and luckily making it to the NBA. So I thank the directors and everybody that was a part of this film, as well as Arthur Agee for doing this and allowing this to happen. And it's definitely inspirational and something that I cherish to this day. That's why I wanted to be here. So thank you all for having me.
Oh, yeah, I should. All-Star NBA. Is Arthur with? Oh, there's. I would like to introduce you, like ball players. This is Frederick Marx, Steve James, Peter Gilbert, and Arthur Agee. Thank you for staying. I'd just like to start off the questions with something that was always sort of... Sorry? Sorry, speak up in the microphone? Okay. One of the things that always struck me was how unobtrusive your crew seemed to be in these households. Do you think, though, that there was any difference in the interaction of the characters or their decision-making because you were there? Did you ever think that things might have been slightly different if you weren't shooting this film with them?
Well, that's like the $64,000 documentary question,
Yes,
what impact does the cameras have? I mean, my feeling is it's kind of both. In one way, it's always amazing to me how little impact it seems to have. I mean, Arthur was still kicked out of St. Joe's. William still suffered a debilitating knee injury. Arthur's family went through hell. All these things happen whether we were there or not. I think people can sometimes think that the camera has more power to affect things. I think on an interpersonal level, the camera can have an impact, but I think the most interesting impact it has is that by us being there and filming, what we're saying to them as people is that we think your story is interesting and has something to say, at least to us. And I think that encourages subjects to think about their lives and reflect on their lives in the process of us making this film, because we're not only following them around, we're also interviewing them and talking to them and saying, what do you think and how do you feel and what's going on with you? And so I think that's one of the really great things that wouldn't maybe happen so easily if the camera weren't there. And that's an impact that the camera has that I think is actually great, because it's a way in which subjects, hopefully, and Arthur can speak to this because he is the subject, but it's a way that they can get something from this process, not just us,
Arthur, did it take you a while, or your family a while, to get accustomed to the fact that there were people in your home watching you so carefully, or?
Yeah, it did. It at first, it was very, unorthodox, because
Nobody else was doing
right.
it.
We was just a normal family yesterday, and now we got cameras in our house. But it really, I say, where we really got comfortable with them, and to where we wasn't always kind of looking like, soon as they turned the camera off, where we was looking like, well, what are they gonna film now? Or I think it happened after when we went out, when both of my mom and dad went out to St. Joe's, when we went out there to go to the camp. I think that's when the trust and the wall had kind of like you know, let down, and my mom and dad kind of saw from their standpoint, and I mean as well as mine, that these are good people, and they mean well. So if it's anything that they're gonna try to tell a story, you know, from our life, they knew that they was gonna do it in the right way, and which is, you know, to our benefit. So
And you knew that too.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Are there any questions in the audience? I can't see. Yes.
What happened to, are you Arthur, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
What happened to you, Arthur, and to William? Are you still playing basketball? What are you doing now?
Well, it's fortunate I didn't make the NBA. William didn't either. William Gates right now is a pastor. He's a pastor of his own church called Living Faith in Chicago. And I am running the Arthur Agee Role Model Foundation and doing basketball camps and trying to better my community through, you know, renovating parks and just trying to push my my educational, you know, Hoop Dreams has an educational curriculum to it. So I'm always trying to use the movie and the curriculum to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders to let them know how important school is. So mainly what I'm doing now is helping the youth every day, 24/7.
How's your family and William's family, especially your parents? Are they still living? And
It's funny you said that. William's family and my family had some some tragedy in both our families. William's brother Curtis was murdered, and my dad, my father, Bo Agee, was murdered in 2004. And so we always kind of say this film was a gift and a curse, but for the most part, it was a gift that keeps on giving, because we know that the youth after us is gonna watch this film and be motivated by it and be able to take something away from it that will live with them for the rest of their lives.
Can I just say, with William, he married Catherine
Yeah,
in the film.
they
Alicia,
have 4 kids with her.
They have 4 kids now, 3 boys who are all basketball crazy, and
I just was with William at an AAU tournament where he was there. It was interesting watching him be the parent, watching his son play in front of college coaches who were trying to recruit him. And fascinating to see him sort of back. And it's funny because a lot of the people who are in the film, kids that he played with, are actually now recruiting coaches for colleges. So it's this crazy, circle coming around.
And Alicia has a degree. She's working as a dental technician and wants to become a dental surgeon, wants to go back to school. So that's how long
And
ago we
Catherine-
finished.
Well,
And
and
Catherine
William,
got a
Catherine's in
master's,
school.
right?
She's working on
On her
her
master's.
and William is a pastor at a church in Cabrini Green, where he grew up. So he moved back home to serve his community.
You had a question.
Yeah, I was curious, like, where the aha moment was for the documentary. Was it actually, because it seemed like you were trying to film 2 individuals from the inner city that were going to St. Joe's, but because you trailed off and went back to the public school, it was kind of a good juxtaposition for the whole documentary, it seemed. Now, was that, it didn't seem like that was purposeful, but was that kind of where the documentary really formed itself, where you were looking at 2 individual players, one from public school and one who was in a private institution?
No, actually,
Uh,
the question was, let's see, I'm trying to think how
aha
to
moment.
succinctly rephrase it. What was the sort of the signal unifying moment? Because we had, obviously, when Arthur left St. Joe's and went to the public school, we had that nice contradiction, or difference at least, between the public school and the private school. But what was the forming idea behind having these 2 young men filmed, basically? And for us, we knew that we wanted to have a young man who was picked by many experts in the field to be an up-and-coming star. And we learned about William through Coach Pingatore at St. Joe's, and we thought, okay, well, he certainly fits that bill. And Arthur was if you will, sort of the everyman figure, the unsung hero, the everyday figure, standing in for, in a sense, the millions of kids who have the dream but may or may not have the talent necessary to launch them into that stratosphere. So we at least knew we wanted to have some different starting points in the two different stories, and that's pretty much what we had.
I think it's interesting. I think we all had different moments probably where we all thought, for instance, one, and I think we had multiple moments where we thought of the story, but I don't remember meeting William till we were at St. Joe's. And so really we were following Arthur, which is where we met William. And for me, it was really interesting was the scene in the office where Pingatore is saying to him, if you do pretty much, you hang in there for 4 years, I promise you're going to go to college, saying that to his family. That was definitely one of those moments where I think all of us went, that's pretty amazing. And there were a lot of moments like that down the road. But that was one of the first ones for me, because I don't really think I knew at least what we were filming yet at that time. I mean, really knew.
well, I think.
You know what I'm saying.
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
No, and I think when Arthur got kicked out of St. Joe's was another one of those moments, because up until then, I mean, when we first started filming, Arthur, we were originally looking for a playground to film on, do a different film than the film it became. And just as you see it in the film, Earl discovered, Arthur saw this kid, and, we all played ball, and we were like, which one? And he was like, that one. That kid's got skills. He's got potential. And it was as much on faith on Earl that we were like, okay, well, this is interesting. And then he took him out to St. Joe's, and then when we got out there, and Pingatore, as you see in the film, says, I've got this other kid coming in who could be a star. Part of what we were thinking was we're hedging our bets because we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't have any money. So here's two kids maybe we can follow, and we'll just see what happens. But once Arthur got kicked out of St. Joe's and went back to Marshall, I think it was one of those aha moments where we were like, okay, now their lives are different. Up until then, even though William was projected as more of a talent, I remember showing footage to people, and they had a hard time keeping them apart. Like, they would be like, well, now which one's Arthur? Which one's William? Once Arthur went to St. Joe's, it was that nobody had any problems understanding the difference between these two kids.
Me to Marshall.
Marshall. So.
Didn't you have some trouble with Pingatore when he saw the film?
He loved it.
He did love it?
that was a great screening. We did a private screening with him.
Did he ask that he be re-edited at least, or?
Well, yeah. Steve and I did that, and we took the film to St. Joe's and showed it to him in his office. And toward the end of that meeting, I mean, it was interesting because, I was scared shitless. And I think you were too. And we were sort of looking at him during certain moments of the film, and he didn't seem to be reacting negatively as we were going through it. And
a little different recollection.
Okay, well, and then at the end, he definitely, seemed. Well, he did ask. He said, where is the film now? And we said, well, it's basically done at this point. He didn't ask literally, that I recall, can we still make changes? But we basically said, the door is closed.
Well, my recollection is that when the moment came up when Arthur got kicked out, and we had people weighing in, like Arthur's mom, about why, and Luther Bedford, Arthur's Marshall coach, sort of assessing why. He was like, ho, wait a second. And we actually stopped the tape. And he said, that's not right. That's not fair. That's not the way it happened. That's not why. And we talked about it. And we basically said, you know what, Gene, it's like, I understand what you're saying, but we think that this really, we pointed out all the reasons why we had made that decision editorially and whatever. And so we kind of talked about it, and he wasn't happy, but we said, let's just keep watching, because we said, there's other things in the movie that I think you're going to feel better about. And so we kept watching, and every time anything positive went by, like him showing concern for William, we'd say, Gene, did you see that? And we kind of pointed out to him. And my recollection is that by the end of the screening, we had pointed out so many positive things that he was starting to feel really good about the film. And I remember thinking, we can't leave him feeling really good about the film because he's not going to feel good about it once it comes out. And so we kind of had to pull back on the on the schmooze a little bit, and I remember saying to him, like, Gene, I'm glad you feel much better about the film, but you do have to understand the film is being critical about what happened to Arthur, and that is the way it's going to remain. What you were saying, we're not going to change that. And I remember when we left, I remember saying to you as we were walking out, because we'd spent a lot of time at that school, I remember saying to Frederick, I said, because we showed it to him in his office at school, I said, take a good look around because we'll never be back.
Well, and that statement came back, whatever it was, 6, 9, 12 months later in the lawsuit when Pingator and the school sued us. And then Ping said in one of the meetings that we had, we tried to facilitate a discussion to quell the suit. And he said, I asked you guys, can you make changes? And he said no, and he pointed right at me. I was like, well, yeah, I more or less did.
But that's
Interesting. It's interesting. Gene, to this day, still uses the film to recruit. I recently did an interview with Evan Turner, who's a pro basketball player who came out of St. Joe's. He remembers vividly being an 8th grader and sitting in Gene's office and watching the film with him. It's interesting how time, I think, takes its, and especially because Gene wanted more than anything to win a state title. That was his thing. And I think once he won that state title, it's interesting. I've run into him a couple of times.
Well, he's still the same.
He's still the same.
Yeah.
Absolutely the same because of what William went through with his
Yeah.
son, which is a great story too.
Yeah.
But he's absolutely the same, but at the same time, he's still always will talk about to any recruit who comes in about that film.
Well, and it's almost like you don't even need to see it. It's got a name and you know what I mean? It's almost like, yeah, we were featured in Hoop Dreams. And it's like.
But he shows it.
That's
what's amazing.
It doesn't matter. It's like it's that old adage, there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's.
But he is a complex character, and that's what's so interesting about the film is that you have complex characters all throughout, and you see not only his manipulation, but also his compassion, and that's probably genuinely on both sides of his character.
Absolutely.
Did you feel the compassion with him, Arthur? I mean, did you feel that he truly cared? Or?
I knew Coach. He cared. He would, if it was a basketball game and his wife was in the hospital, he was going to the basketball game. Like Coach was. No, seriously.
I'm
Coach
not sure
was
that says, hey, he's really empathetic.
Coach was that much
Cared about
into
basketball.
He cared about basketball, and he was a coach. Did we care about him? Throwing a little kick in Williams' butt, or when he said little stuff in the film when he said, "Oh no, do it left." I know you could do it right. You can't do it left. I looked at those type of things as motivation. I didn't look at him as he was being negative or downing William. But other people kind of saw it that way. But me personally, I liked the coach. I liked him all the way up until he kicked me out.
One of the sad things, I think, because of Gene is such a strong character, is one of the characters who I think was really wonderful was Luther Bedford, who was a really amazing man.
A hard-ass coach.
Hard-ass coach. He was as hard-ass as Gene, probably harder.
Yeah.
And also the world's greatest interview. 30 minutes with Luther Bedford was like interviewing anybody else for 3 hours.
Yeah, no, 29 minutes out of that 30 minutes was
usable.
It was great. Yeah.
But he was an amazing man.
Luther Bedford passed away in January of 2005, and so he was a big part of my maturation coming from my junior year to my senior year. All of what you saw, what I did in my senior year, was mainly because of Coach Bedford. Coach Bedford was like Bobby Knight and like 5 more Bobby Knights just all rolled up into one. Like, I don't care if your mom's sitting behind you watching the game, you gonna get it. if you do something on the court, I'm not holding back anything. He was just that, you know, he's one of those 60s guys from the 60s. So he didn't do no recruiting, panhandling player. Oh, you're so good. Come to my school. No, don't go to King. Come to my school. Coach didn't do none of that. You want to go to King? Go to King. Don't come to my school.
When he died, they had a service at Marshall in the auditorium where they had his body in wake, open casket, in the auditorium, packed. It was an incredible day. And at one point, we were talking about this today in the car, at one point I don't know if he was an assistant coach or whatever, but he got up and grabbed the mic and he goes, "This is Luther Bedford, the coach of the Marshall Commandos, the class of the Red West Division, which is the class of the city of Chicago basketball, which is the class of basketball in the United States in place."
Just went nuts.
up.
It was just wild.
Just
yeah.
went- And there's Luther lying in wake.
Yeah. It was more of a celebration than him just coming back home saying, "Okay, goodbye, Luther." Everyone's up, applauding, cheering, and
But Luther also brought groceries to your family, didn't he? When you
He
guys
did.
had hard times.
He did.
Which he never mentioned to us at all.
yeah,
Luther never mentioned it
he
to us.
didn't want any any pat on the back for for doing good deeds or anything. If Bedford felt it was put on his heart to help a family or to help one of his teammates' parents, then he would do that.
I remember, and I don't know if it was on film or off film, but talking to Luther once, and we said, "Do you help the kids out?" He goes, "How could I help all those kids out?" I mean, I can't remember
he
the
downplayed
phrase.
it.
He
He
totally
said no.
downplayed
He said,
it.
"They're
It was
not
like,
my kids. I
Yeah.
got my own kids of my own."
Yeah, and this guy was and he was also in the community in Chicago.
Yeah.
He was a huge, he was the head of the African American coaches for the city of Chicago and very big and all around the state. He's an incredible guy.
And all the other high school top powerhouses like St. Joe's, King, Simeon, all those coaches respected him. So when he won city that year, they knew like we was an extension of how he coached, of how he thought about life, how he, talked to us in practice. When we went out there, we could be down 15, 20 points. Our fans know we're going to come back because that's Bedford.
Yes.
I was just wondering about a more technical question about the editing process, like how much footage you ended up having and how you handled it, editing all of that over the years and coming up with the film that you have now.
Could you talk about the editing process?
It took about 3 years or so to edit, and we did it. It was about 250 hours of footage, and we had all of our. The whole thing was shot on beta, except for the last year or so when Peter got a beta SP gear, and so we went up a notch. But then we transferred it all to VHS tapes, and then it was all hand logged. I did a lot of it, and we had interns do a lot of the logging. So we had, I don't know, about 6 notebooks of logs for all of the footage, and then of course we had all of the interviews transcribed. But it took a long time. The first string out, just to sort of, I tried to get it took about a year to just go through the footage and just get scenes just strung out so we could sort of see what's there. Was like 10 hours long. And so that's when we got help. And we got Bill Hogsey came in and helped cut, and that's when Steve moved into the editing room. And my own admiration for Steve and his directing of the story really springs from the shaping of the story in the editing, because he really crafted the story that, the beginnings of the story that eventually reached the screen, and then we all sort of polished it immensely from that point. But that's sort of how we did it.
One of the amazing things was, so you have to remember, this is no Final Cut Pro, no Avid. This is VHS offline to offline.
Linear.
So, yeah, just, so it was.
They don't even know what you're talking about.
Right, exactly. It was, so just even if you made changes, not only were they not time code correct, but everything would sort of fall apart as you went. So the sound, by the time you'd edit a scene, you could hardly see the scene. You'd have to reconstitute it to make it. It was an amazing process, a hard process.
But it was, I think for all of us, it was, you know, I mean, Fred labored to, you know, in that initial phase, mightily to get his arms around all of this material. And, you know, Peter had shot with Barbara Koppel on a great movie called American Dream. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. But, and so, you know, I think for all of us, this project was, well, I'll just speak for myself. It was like learning really, even though I went to film school and all that, it was like really learning how to make a film, a real film. And I feel like if you watch the film from sort of every aspect, from editing to shooting to everything about it, you sort of see, I think, us learning. It's a much better film by the end than it was at the beginning. In part because I think we really learned how to do documentary by just doing it. And from being able to pull in each of our strengths and experience, and, you know, Peter's experience with Barbara was
And we had incredible mentors.
key.
We were very
Yeah.
lucky. I mean,
Yeah.
we had Cartemquin, the group that we're associated with in Chicago, and they're just incredible filmmakers, have been making films for 45 years now. And then to be able to bring in people like Barbara to look at cuts, Michael Apted to look at cuts. We were the people who had sort of helped us. We were very lucky that they, you know, sort of came to us and looked and were hard on us too about it. And then there was another fellow here, Ira Deutschman, who was also a huge help to us down the road to make sure people saw the film. So.
Yes.
What happened with the lawsuit? Did you ever make up with Coach Baby or what happened there?
We came to a settlement with St. Joe's, and they essentially wanted money for portraying St. Joe's in a false light. Gene Pinkerton did, which we rejected, and they wanted money for him and for the school. And so the agreement we made with them was that we would we didn't settle because we thought we were culpable or vulnerable for what the film was, but because of a release that Gene had signed early on that was a little fuzzy. So that was part of it. But the other part of it was that we wanted to make a bigger statement with it, which was we settled with them and we said, the only way we will settle with you is if we also make Marshall High School a partner to this. And the money that goes to the school, to St. Joe's, will go to help inner city kids go to St. Joe's High School, non-athletes. And the money that goes to Marshall will help them to help kids leave Marshall being a public school to go on to college. And at first they were quite resistant to that. And then they came around realizing that that was the only terms that we were willing to settle. So
Yes.
we felt good about that.
In the back.
I'm just curious about, from Arthur, how you understand the message of the film. Because the basketball player said he found the film very inspiring, and he carries it with him. But as I understood, you were counseling 7th and 8th graders to stay in school and study. So I understand that to mean you don't think this is a film to inspire, but to deter.
No, it's definitely to inspire. I never want to kill any kid's dream. I never want to tell him that he can't make it to the NBA. I never want to tell him that, you know, this sport has too many big guys, and you're not going to be able. Your talent level, you too short. It's never that. It's to tell them the truth about it, and that what can happen to you if you do not make it. So the whole number one thing is to get your education along with trying to be a good basketball player. So that I understand with Baron Davis, how he was inspired, but I have so many other friends that I know that has been inspired from not the basketball, but just because, you know, I did my book report. I wasn't that A student, but I did just enough to stay eligible. Like you know, my mom had to come up to the school and you know, because I wasn't taking care of my business in the classroom. When that happened to me, I knew what I was doing, and I just wasn't putting forth the effort. But there are so many kids out here that I talk to now that don't know what they're doing, that don't put forth the effort. So when I say to them, nothing has to do with basketball, but your education. Long as you get your education, the basketball and any other sport is going to take care of itself. So that's my main message.
Yes.
Arthur, you said like the film was a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
I was curious to know what the curse was.
Well, the curse was just, I mean, having a camera follow you on the west side, one of the toughest sides of Chicago. You know, having 3 white guys follow you in a predominantly black neighborhood in the mornings, in the afternoons. I mean, going to the store. Then when these guys are not around, you going up to the playground to try to play, and then you got, you know, gang bangers. You got other guys talking about, oh yeah, he the one got the cameras following him around. He think he's special. He think he this. He think he that. So those type of things was unwanted, you know, because I didn't want that. I didn't want to have to deal with those things. Like, no, I'm not thinking I'm better than you. Like, okay, so they filming me. I mean, but I'm still in the neighborhood. I'm still living where you guys live at. So, I mean, I'm not trying to say that I'm better than you guys, but I want to be better than you guys. I want to go to college and get me a degree. Like, who's saying not getting that is not being cool? So I always thought that was the coolest thing. And, you know, the curses with William's brother and my dad, and then things
But they weren't. Their murders weren't connected to the film.
I mean, their murders weren't connected to the film. But I always say, just like Michael Jordan, how his father passed is like, it's just in this world. If anything good happens to you, I don't care if you're a celebrity, making millions of dollars, you're not prone to bad things and trials and tribulations happening to you. And so I just felt that because we kind of started this documentary film and everything that then spawned off of it, everybody naming it this and that, that we was gonna have some trials and tribulations from being in this film and getting this fame and whatever else comes with it. Like, it just wasn't gonna be all, oh, we buy my mom's a house and we just ride off into the sunset. And, you know, number one, I mean, the other part of, I didn't make the NBA. That was a blow to me, but it wasn't a blow to me where I just stopped living. Where I felt like I had other things to accomplish, and I always felt that I could do other things other than basketball.
Could I ask the filmmakers to give us a short capsule of what you've been up to since Hoop Dreams has been finished? Starting Fred.
A short capsule for 17 years. Okay. Well, the first thing I did was I went out and I made a dramatic feature film called The Unspoken that I co-wrote, directed, and produced. Then I went back to this theme that really had stuck with me from Hoop Dreams, and that was, you know, I was really struck by this question mark of, you know, how as a society are we helping our young men across the threshold of adolescence into maturity. And in Hoop Dreams in particular, I was really struck by all of the adults except for the moms, you know, except for Sheila and William's mom, were really exploiting the young men for their own ends to some extent. And so I made a documentary in Newark, New Jersey called Boys to Men. It's kind of a snapshot of teen boys in the year 2000, 15 and 16-year-old boys, to see how they're doing. And then most recently I did a film called Journey from Zanskar with the Dalai Lama in it. We shot it in northern India. And it's a story about 2 Tibetan monks who take 17 children and they walk over these giant Himalayan mountains to get them into Tibetan schools and monasteries in lower India. And it's quite a sort of an emotional tale, because once these children as young as 4 leave home, they may never return again. So it's kind of a heartbreaking but nonetheless inspiring tale. But now I'm actually going back to this theme again because it just won't let me go. And I have to make a film about rites of passage and mentorship programs for young people, because to me that's about solutions. That's what will be the panacea or the silver bullet that I see that we all need to awaken to as elders, to get all of our adolescents in rites of passage programs and get them hooked up with mentors to help them understand what their purpose is in this life, to find meaning and fulfillment.
I've just been trying to help put 3 kids through college. I've done a number of films since Hoop Dreams. I mean, Hoop Dreams was, you know, a career launcher in about as good a way as, you know, could be for me. And so I did a few biopics out in Hollywood. You know, Arthur was in one of them, and Peter did one of them with me. He produced and shot one of them, not the one that Arthur was in, unfortunately. That would have been a great collaboration. But and then I've mostly done documentaries though since then, and Peter and I have worked on a few of them together. You know, just staying busy and trying to have projects going and get them done and then move on to the next one. And Peter and I did one called At the Death House Door together, which we were really felt blessed to do. It was a great project about an amazing guy.
And then,
you know,
well,
Stevie, and that we'd worked on together, and
but
some other stuff.
I have to say, Interrupters, that great film. That's what he's been up to.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Arthur started his film career.
Yeah, that's right. You made a film too.
I had a mildly film career. No, actually, let me tell you, these guys, for being around them, I was one of those guys that you see in a film that I want to be everything. I think I'm going to be a firefighter. I think I'm going to be an architect. I think I want to be a comedian. No, I want to go into real estate. No, I want to own my own business. Listen, kids are going to go through that. I don't care if they're in college or whatever. It's gonna be something. It's a turning point in every kid's life where he's gonna have that passion and the light bulb's gonna turn on, and that's what he's gonna want to do for the rest of his life. Well, when these guys came in my life, not only was I the subject of this film, but I wanted to know what this camera did, what is producing, what is directing. So when I got to college, I majored in radio and television. Had my own radio sports show in the mornings, learned how to work the board and all of that, and came back after school. 2006, I did a film with a friend of mine called Hoop Reality. And in this movie, I wanted to show, and I want to try to do the same thing they did, but to another kid at my high school, where I went and followed him around. And the hoop reality of it was, I didn't make the NBA, so now I'm back in Chicago. I done turned the camera on this other kid, and the hoop reality is, this kid was nothing like me or William. This kid knows that he has to make it in the NBA or play basketball professionally somewhere. This kid knows that he has no other chance to take care of his family or live productively. He can't do anything else. This is what I want to expose in this movie of Hoop Reality, to show kids that it's kids out here just like you that think like that there's only thing that they can do is just play basketball. And this kid, Patrick Beverly, went to University of Arkansas, was a top player in Chicago, wound up getting kicked out of Arkansas for plagiarism, didn't go back to school, got a deal overseas, played over there for like a year, got drafted by the Los Angeles Lakers, got traded to the Miami Heat, all this happening to this kid that knows he has nothing else but basketball. He has to make it work. So right now, this year he was Final Four in the Russian league, Euro League, for the Final Four Cup. So I mean, some guys
That's a big deal.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
a big deal. That's
some guys. I tell kids right now. I'm working with a guy, Dr. Al Barrios. He's a sports clinical psychologist, and we trying to show kids how those guys that you don't see, like a Kevin Durant, that nobody's seen come in and just take over the league. Derrick Rose, what I talk about gift and the curse. Derrick Rose had a rise out of this world. It was bound to something bad to happen to him to show his character. Now we need to see if Derrick Rose's character can overcome this injury. It's all about how you overcome things in your life. It shows you how you can go forward and other people is inspired by it. But Patrick Beverly is one of those guys. Like, kids are gonna watch that film and see Patrick Beverly and say, well, where is he at now? Well, he's not on Chicago street corner selling drugs. You know, he had 2 kids, you know, out of wedlock by 2 women, but still, Miami Heat signed him to a $1.5 million contract. He didn't even make the team. They gave him $1.5 million. Pat Riley liked him so much that he paid him and kept his rights and sent him over to Russia and told him to go work on your game for 2 years. So him and his mom living in Russia now, and hopefully he come back talking, you know,
You know, if I ever get to pitch in Hollywood again, I'm going to take you along because I think this guy.
a great story. Yeah.
yeah.
Peter.
I've continued making films, some with Steve. I'm very active at Cartemquin Films in Chicago. I'll do a cheap pitch, which is, I have a film playing here actually in a couple weeks called Brother Number One. That is a film from the New Zealand Film Commission that I worked on in the Human Rights Watch Film Festival. So come on down, 19th, 20th, 21st.
Brother,
So
man.
cheap pitch. But I've just basically continued to direct and make movies, and I love it. And the main thing is that I'm addicted to longitudinal storytelling. For better or for worse, I love the idea of following people over a period of time. So.
Well, you did a great job, and I wanted to thank you all for being here, and you guys have to go and eat something. And thank you so much for joining us afterwards and coming to New York to be with us tonight.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.